the smartest species on the planet.
No.
You know, because we're not behaving in a symbiotic relationship. We're not sharing resources as, you know,
we're not in
other
harmony.
species do. We're not in harmony.
We kill not for food or sustenance with honor, like, you know, like things
Gluttony.
are killed in nature all the time. Like we do it for power, you
And
know,
gluttony,
and,
right? We
yeah,
can't get enough.
and greed. You know, like it's just, but we have the capacity to be loving and caring, and we see that all the time too. It's just choosing that. Choosing that.
And then, I mean, but you know, you think of, you know, we'll go back to the children in the school that were, have been emulating violence and other, and that to them is a form of power, right? Mm-hmm. But where is that, you know, you think that anger and that fear is coming from another place.
Right.
And it's being fed every day in some form.
Well, when you have kids spending like 4, 5, 6 hours at a clip, like playing violent video games where they're gunning people down for whatever reason, like that is wiring your brain.
Oh, yes.
That is desensitizing you to violence. And, you know, that was introduced by the government to desensitize soldiers so they could go into battle and kill people, because your core does not want, you know, your soul, you're not made to kill people. You're like, it's just like, it's hard to do. And the hunters that I know that hunt, you know, like to take a shot at an animal, like it's not an easy thing to do. It's another mammal, you know, like, and I think if you do it with reverence and honor and know that you're going to honor that animal and eat it and take it in, and like, it's one thing, but like, I think as humans, like, we're being asked to go against the core of who we are. And that creates a rift within us. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And then it becomes easier and easier to sort of like separate yourself and to do horrible things to nature and horrible things to other people, because you've created this division where you're like almost separate from.
Well, and then, you know, you think of how we have the highest rate of depression, right, in the world, in our culture. And you think of, you know, if you look at, you know, from a drug standpoint, you know,
we're the most medicated.
The most medicated, and we have the highest use of antidepressants and pain medication.
And that's what David Brooks told me. That's the part that I took away. The suicide rate in the last 15 years has gone up 75% for teenagers, 35% across the population in 15 years. Yeah, like, those numbers are astronomical. Like, why? What? How are we so depressed? Right. You know, like.
Well, I think it goes back to what you just said. I mean, we're separating ourselves from our. This sounds corny, but our true self, like of how we are supposed to be stewards in the world, and we're not doing what we're wired to do.
Yeah. We are wired for connection. We are wired for connection. We are animals that live in tribes. That's how we survive. Our babies breastfeed for a really long time. We depend on each other to survive. And mammals.
And the thing is, we depend on. I mean, this is important, right? Being in the presence of each other, and looking into each other's eyes,
and touching, and hugging each other. And like, I hug all the kids and tell them I love them. And like, you're not legally allowed to touch children,
right?
You know, in schools, the teachers are not supposed to hug them. Like, we're putting 4-year-olds in school all day. And saying don't touch them,
right?
Like, that is criminal. Like, get away.
It's interesting how we have this relationship that we're developing is one of being afraid of each other. You know, which is pushing us further away from each other, which is causing the depression and anxiety, and
which sells weapons, which sells security systems, which, I mean, you can make a lot more money that way. I mean, we have a really expensive war machine. We spend so much money on arms and security. You know, like, if we spent all that money on making sure everyone had clean water and food and access to books and, bicycles, toys.
So we talk about resilience. So how do we recover from where we are, right, as a society?
Right.
And that feels like a very, very grand mission, right?
Yeah, it really does.
And I remember saying to you, I think I've said this before, but in the restaurant when I was in this place where I'm like, oh, I'm just not doing enough. I'm not doing enough.
Yeah.
And you pulled me out of that. You said, well, wait a minute, This is what you're doing. You don't have to save the world, right? You have to start here, right?
Right.
And creating a better person for ourselves, and then that will radiate out.
I think in Alice in Wonderland, it's like, I always give very great advice, but I very seldom take it.
Right.
It's the same thing. I say to you what I need to hear myself.
Right.
Because that is it's like not enough. I mean, I constantly feel like this is not enough. There's an endless need.
And then where does that come from?
And that doesn't serve, that's
right.
horrible for me to feel.
That's really, and I'm not talking about, because I've been in that place before, obviously. I just revealed that. And so that is huge ego, right?
Yeah, I guess
mean, it's
so.
it's like I'm not doing it, but I have the capacity to do bigger and greater things. I mean, that's...
Well, I think it is a story, too. Like,
right.
It's a story that I tell myself that, that I'm not enough. That's one story. And then the other side of the story is that I'm too much.
Right.
Because I get that a lot, too. You're too sensitive. You're too outspoken.
Right.
You're too weird. You're too crazy. You're like...
So where's that? But where's that coming from?
Yeah, deep down things that were told to me by, my family, by my society. You're too smart to be an artist. You should be doing something more important. My culture tells me every day that art's not important. You're going to learn reading and math every single day of the week. Art you get for 30 minutes once a week. It's not that important.
Right.
We're going to take that funding out first. So what I've dedicated my life to, what I chose to study in college, what I chose to do with my entire career vocation is not valued in the society that I live in.
But it's valued by you.
It's valued by me.
Yeah, right. Well, but I mean...
Swimming upstream.
Yeah, but very few people follow their passion, right? I mean, we live in a society of people that are following somebody else's idea of what passion is.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is tied to material gain and power.
And what they were told was important by their society. Like, I literally had people go like, that's a waste of your intellect.
Right.
To do that.
That's sad. Although I remember, I don't know if I ever told you this, I remember my mother had given me a box of artwork that I'd done when I was like in kindergarten and first grade. And this was, well, obviously before they passed away. So it was probably early 2000s, and I pulled this stuff out, and there were, I think it was in kindergarten. They said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I wrote, I want to be an artist. And I started crying when I pulled that out. I'm like, I got so far away from that, dream that I had for myself.
Right.
And like and it's like I
so sad for you.
and no, I was like, oh, and it was like I felt like I'd been punched in the the solar plexus.
And you surround yourself with art.
Right.
You wear art. I mean, like everything, like you ooze it. But yeah, you weren't allowed to do that.
I don't know that it's interesting because that sent me on this trajectory of where I took another path. And, I don't know. And then thinking about things that I was told by my parents. I mean, I remember two very strong memories. And my father saying, make sure they're proud they hired a Haynes, with the job. So, okay, what does that mean?
Well, it means you're going to have a job, right? Or someone's hiring you, first of all.
And then the other one was, I want to make sure my mother said I wanted to make sure I raised good citizens.
Yeah, yeah.
But you're never told what that is. It's implied, right? So you take
and
on all
sacred
this
law is not the citizenry follows the law made by man that is manipulated. Like if you're following a higher law, you might not look like a good citizen. You might look like someone who's going against the grain a little bit.
Right.
Speaking out of turn. Like saying I think that's wrong.
Well, it's interesting. I just, you think of it, and this is how I think our roles are in our society as mentors. But you look at, there are words that come out of people's mouths, and then there's no explanation. Like, this is what I want you to do. This is why I want you to do this.
Right.
Like my mother, I want to make sure we hired good citizens, or Ray's hired.
Right.
I got the two mixed up.
Right.
Ray's,
And
Ray's good
what
citizens.
does that look like, Mom?
Right. No,
Yeah.
So then you didn't give me
I'm
like
supposed
the
to,
information, so I have to watch you and see what you do and what's important to you.
Right. Do
And
we
so-
honor the president?
Right.
Whether
Yeah,
we don't question that leadership, like, is that a good citizen? Like, I'd say no.
Right. and I think that what are the so many times we say these words to impressionable young people,
Right.
and then you don't say, I know at the restaurant I'll ask one of the kids to do something, and this is how I want this done, and this is why.
Right. This is why.
Because it was never told. I was never told, you just do it. You just do it, and you don't question it, and you move forward, and then you're left with this like unfinished pie, right?
Right. Right. I had a little girl 2 days ago at school, and we were playing outside doing this project. I'm like, this is going to be about play. It's about fun. So like as they came out the door, they did a little hopscotch thing and then jumped through 2 hula hoops. And this little girl, she was black. She was overweight. She was a fat, beautiful little black girl. And she tripped going through the hula hoop, and she scuffed her hands, and I'm sure it hurt some. But what really hurt was that everyone started laughing at her.
Oh, yeah, that's
And, like, I pulled her aside, and first she's like, it hurts. Like, I'm hugging her, and she started slamming her fist down. She's like, they're laughing at me, and she's just angry. And I hugged her, and I said, the pain on the outside of your body is one thing, but the real pain right now is having those kids laugh at you. And this scratch people can see. The other scratch is way inside, and it's really painful. And I said, I've got salve that my friend makes out of these plants I'm going to get for your hands, and I'm going to talk to these kids so that they understand that was wrong, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We then moved the hoops onto the grass, so they weren't doing that part on the sidewalk, so we didn't make that happen again. But in our circle, I said, I know it is so confusing for you kids to not laugh when someone falls down because you're watching cartoons, and we've got cartoon characters that are getting squashed and running into buildings, and your job is to laugh at them, and that's supposed to be funny. When someone gets hurt, you laugh. I said, and we also have like a president and leaders that are making fun of people that are disabled and that are different. I said, so I cannot imagine you have a clear idea of what is appropriate.
Right. Yeah. And
I mean, how confusing to be 7 years old and trying to figure out how to be in the world.
Right.
I said, but I will tell you, when someone falls down when they're trying to do something, they do not want to be laughed at. Can I take a pause here? And they're just like, I said, but I also like understand that like it's hard for you to know that, but do you get that? And like all you have to do is talk to them.
Right, yeah.
All you have to do is explain to that. And in the meantime, her resiliency was having someone listen to her, having someone witness her pain, share it, and then try to explain. So she rejoined the group and was fine. And then unfortunately, halfway through the class, someone comes and says, you need to go to the nurse. You haven't taken your blood pressure today. And yanked her out of the group because she is a heavy kid. And apparently they're, so even though she had merged back into the group, which is hard to do.
Right.
Then she gets yanked out for another reason. And I just thought, like, what horrible timing. And I wanted to, but like that is, like, that's what it takes. It takes really talking to people and kids, like going like, you know what? That's not the way to do it. Contrary to what you might be seeing and witnessing in the rest of this society, like, it hurts people's feelings. And I'm sensitive. Like when people say things to me, I'm like, it hurts my feelings. Like it doesn't roll right off. Like I feel it. And I feel your pain and I feel her pain.
Well, and I think that's one thing that I feel in many instances, that people are very irresponsible with their words because they don't treat it as energy. And it's they're just as important, and can be used as much as a weapon as something that's right.
And when you do that, like, just say, I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean, like, that's all you have to do is, like, say you're sorry and mean it.
And saying you're sorry, we've talked about this before, requires a tremendous amount of vulnerability, right? And accountability.
Yeah.
Because you have to realize that, what I just did was hurtful.
Right.
And I can't just let this hang there. I've got to, recognize my accountability and how I affected this person.
But if you know that you can be a participant in someone building resiliency, if you know that you can help be part of that.
Facilitate it, right? Hopefully.
And then, like, we all can do that. And, like, that's what I want to see, like, in that little teeny microcosm when we're working together and we're being outside. It's like we're talking about kindness.
Right.
We're talking about, like, what are you grateful for, and how can you express that, and how can you know what's going on with these people? You have to listen to them. You have to practice giving them a little bit of room to share something, and that is, it's a practice for all of us.
Well, and I think I've shared this before, but the whole dynamic in the restaurant with customers and servers. And I feel like people are coming into my home, and I feel like there's an intimacy that's shared there. You have somebody, who's having food, who's they're having intimate conversation with their friends. They have somebody serving them, which is also intimate.
Right.
So the whole, everybody's participating. And I'm talking about psychological resilience, because you have a customer that could be rude to their server. And that server takes that and shares it with everybody else, which creates tension. And how you think about how that radiates out. And I always say to everybody, or the people with whom I work, is like, let that drop. And then let that person be a teacher to you on how you don't want to be in the world. Because by you taking this back to all of us and sharing that, you continue the cycle of negativity, and you have the ability to stop it right there. And that's
where it's really hard, like, to find that line of what is, like, when is it okay to speak? Like, as a server, are you allowed, or can you be audacious enough to say, excuse me, sir, you just addressed me very rudely, and I would appreciate if you respected me. Like, but as a server, are they not allowed to have that voice?
Well, I will tell you that my opinion of that has evolved over the years.
I bet.
and I do, if somebody that works with me feels like they've been treated inappropriately, and they share that with the other person, I would be very supportive of that.
Yeah. As long as it was done in a respectful manner. I'm so glad to hear that, because I just think people need to have someone have their back when they are speaking their truth against authority, because otherwise, it's a dictatorship.
I had somebody new, and that I'm training right now. She's going to be working there for the summer. I was sharing some of these things with her, and she said, and the customer's always right. I said, no, not necessarily. Not always right. And, I don't know when we started creating this culture in our society where, because you have money and you're purchasing a service, that everything that you want, or you want that you want to engage with because of your position as a customer,
Right.
that you're always right.
Right. Yeah.
And
And
that's,
your restaurant has a different feel. Like the people that work there, I feel like are family. I mean, I want them to sit down and eat with us. Like there is, and they have this like warmth about them where like I think most people that come in like fall in love with them and are so happy to have them. And they're just, they're professionals, but they're warm-hearted, lovely beings, and that shines through.
the other, but we're talking about resilience, right? So you're in a
that's right.
situation where. But I mean, in the situation where somebody throws you off kilter, right?
Right. How do you bounce back?
How do you bounce back from that?
And how do you not infect all your other exchanges with people? Yeah.
And I've, been in many situations where something happens and I say to the people with whom I work, just shake it off, just move on, just shake it off, which is unfair and insensitive to me, for me, I think, because people have their own ways of processing it. And I think that if you are not allowed to be able to process it in your way, and you're taking on my attitude was, just shake it off, it's no big deal.
Right.
It's insensitive in a way, right?
Right.
Because
I know, like sometimes, when someone does things in traffic or whatever, you're like, it's just like, I'm sorry, like you must be having a really bad day. Like peace be with you.
Right.
Like, peace out. Yeah, you need some love, don't you?
Right, yeah.
You need some love. That's why you're being so mean and grouchy to everyone. Like, you didn't get a hug today. Like, just recognizing that wound and responding from like, wow, if they're acting like that, they must be having a really hard time.
Right. And then, you think of the, where we are on this constant search for self-awareness, right? And we carve out time in our lives to do that.
And force other people along with us.
Right, exactly. That's too hard of a job. That's too stressful. But I mean, and some people don't either. They don't know. They don't carve out that time to understand what they need, or they're being told by,
or they're not questioning it.
Right.
Yeah, they're not questioning it, which, thank goodness. I think, like, just questioning is good. Questioning the status quo, questioning like the way that we're doing things is not really working.
Right.
It's not working environmentally. Our medical system is not working well. Our education system is not working well. Like, we're getting by, but it's not working well for the whole. And so, like, it is time for all of us to question all of this and all of that, and to do it in a way that is reflective and gentle and loving. But we don't need to be shooting people down. We need to really be questioning and curious about how we can do things differently so that everyone and everything is supported and is brought in and has equality.
And I think that, back to your comment about we need to question everything, and we most certainly do, but I think it's scary for some people because when you question, if you're in a peer group, say you're a member of, I'll just, a church, and you question things, you're marginalized, right? You're not brought in, you're not brought closer in, you're pushed further out.
Right.
So for some people, that's their only community. So they're afraid to question.
Right. And if you have a plantation and your whole, like, way of life is by having slaves that work for free so you can live in this manner that was handed down to you, like, you don't want to question that. Like, it's working for you.
You know about Thomas Jefferson right now?
I think I was. Like, such wisdom, such a wise man that just had to put a big blinder up on that one.
Which and I think that becomes mode of survival, right? Well, in a way, because we compartmentalize.
Survival is not, no, he was surviving just fine. It's something else.
No, I mean, you're compartmentalizing. Like, you're saying one thing, but in this instance, it doesn't, it's over here.
But you see, if we had resiliency.
And I'm not saying that's okay.
If we had resiliency, we wouldn't have to compartmentalize.
Right.
If we could take those things that were uncomfortable and hard, instead of walling them off and blocking them off. If we could actually look at them, heal from them, process them, and build resiliency, we wouldn't have to have all these compartments that don't actually merge, I think. I mean, Alexander
back to
von
weave.
Humboldt. Back to weave.
Back to weave,
We've got to
right.
weave these discordant elements in, too. You know, and it works in music. It works in jazz. It works in art. Like, you can weave the darkness and the light together, and it's strong. Yeah, you can't just cut things off, chop them away, like we've done with every system.
Right.
You know, like the medicine works with just our bodies.
Right.
It doesn't look at anything else. Like, that is not the way it works.
Well, it also just it breaks the body down into components, right? You have a heart specialist, you have a nephrologist, kidney specialist, you have a
Yeah, it's like, I'm a whole person. My soul's in here too. And I got a lot of emotions running around.
And how powerful those emotions do affect your physicality
Yeah,
or physiology.
yeah.
And that's a whole nother topic right there.
Maybe
right?
maybe for next week.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we've been talking for a long time.
We have, right?
Yeah.